I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Iven Vian. Iven is the co-founder and COO of Anthem Capital. He was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force after 20 years, and he's passionate about operational excellence and execution of his apartment communities and their impact on the surrounding communities. Iven, first, let me just say, well, thank you for your service and thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jason. Pleasure being here and excited to have the opportunity to share.
Awesome. Well, let's start. Let's just get people to know you a little bit better. Why don't you tell us your background, your story? Obviously, you have a military background, but I'm sure there's more to you than that. So let's hear a little bit about you and how you got into real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, born and raised in Salem, Oregon. Grew up in the Northwest. I love the trees. I love the mountains and blue water I have over there. Not like where I live today in Oklahoma City. Pretty flat out here and not much blue water, but quite honestly, I enjoy Oklahoma City and I've been here for a while now. I spent 20 years in the Air Force. Went to the Air Force Academy, graduated in 2001, and spent 20 years flying the B-1 bomber and been all over the world. But now I do multifamily investing full time. Kind of how I got involved in real estate. Investing started off with first trying the stock market investing world. Going to the Air Force Academy, they would preach to you about how it's so important to invest in the stock market. And on the junior year, they have the company USAA come over to the base or the campus, and they offer you this low interest loan. And the whole idea that I had was, instead of buying a car with my low interest loan, I was going to invest in the stock market and earn a return on investment greater than the percentage of my loan and keep the difference. Well, I put my $21,000 investment in a aggressive growth fund back then, and it went zero overnight, basically. And like everything that I put my hopes in, and after all that teaching and whatnot, I mean, the professors it would be like a engineering class, but they would spend the first 20 minutes talking about investing in the stock market. I mean, that's how much they conditioned you to believe that this was the way to create a future for yourself when you retire from the Air Force. Well, that investment went zero overnight, and of course I became very frustrated. It became angry, but I was like, there's got to be a better way to put your hard-earned money to work for you. And I started venturing out and started learning about other ways to go about doing that. And that's when I discovered owning rental properties. I started reading basic books about rental properties. And how I first got my first deal, now fast forward 2007, I'm getting relocated to Abilene, Texas. And I was staying with my mother-in-law at the time, so our house wasn't ready for us to move in. My wife was pregnant with my first child. And my mother-in-law was like, hey, there's this lady going through a divorce down the street, and she really wants to sell her house. Maybe you should go see if she's willing to sell it to you. And I literally just dropped everything I had in my hands. I think I was still trying to move into a little room in that house, and went down the street, knocked on a door, and introduced myself and said, hey, I heard you trying to sell your house. You said you want to buy it. And I said, sure. I said, how much? She said, $33,000. I said, sold. That's about how quick it went. And I bought that house. And, I didn't even do a comp study. I didn't do understand how much it cost to fix it up. I put my eyes on it. I looked around, but it looked good to me. I was like, sounds like that's a cheap price. I think I could buy a car for that. Sure, why not? And USAA did give me a loan for 90% loan to value to buy that house. I was all in about $5,000-6,000, and I rented for $850. And I was realizing about a $300 a month cash flow. I said, oh my gosh, there's something to this real estate game. I didn't lose 21,000. I just bought an asset investment property that is now paying me monthly cash flow.
Yeah. Hard lesson to learn on the stock market there. I guess that's not the way you want to start in investing. And but yeah, it makes the point that typically the stock market is a lot more volatile. I mean, real estate's all over the news now because of interest rates, but I think in general, despite that, it's still the less volatile, safer investment vehicle than the stock market. It's people don't talk so much about how much the stock market is lost because that just happens, and that people it's sort of normal. It's not news anymore. But
Right.
so you started this first house. I imagine you probably can't get a $33,000 house much of anywhere right now, but from there you were going to live in that one, or you bought that specifically to rent?
I bought it as a rental property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then kind of continue that same process from there.
Yeah, and so now I got the real estate bug, and the next house though didn't go as well, unfortunately. This time it was, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months later. Like I said, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and we had to rush out to the door to go to the hospital for her to deliver the child. Well, we didn't bring the bag, right? So we get through the delivery, and she's like, "Hey, go home and get the bag." So I go back home to get the bag, and I remember stepping out the front door with the bag in my hand. I looked out to the left, and I was like, "Oh yeah, there was this abandoned home next to me with all these windows boarded up. I wonder what's going on with this house, right?" And I look at my watch. I was like, "You know what? She's asleep. I've been there for a
Oh
while.
no.
Maybe I can go figure out who owns this house and see what I can do with that." And so I looked up the address on the tax roll or county assessor site and found out the person lived down the street. If this person in fact owned the house, I went down the street. I was like, I got time. I'm gonna go figure it out real quick. I went down to the street, the house down the street, and knocked on this guy's door. And it was this very large man with his shirt off, a lot of hair on his chest. I remember. He's like, "What do you want?" I was like, "Sir, I think you own the house next to me." "Yeah, so." And he goes, "Well, do you want to buy it?" I said, "Maybe." He said, "Well, step inside." And literally, now I'm in his house. I go up to these stairs into his attic. I'm like in this little darkened room in his attic,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he's got like this one light bulb hanging down over the table, and he's like saying, basically, he's like showing me this note he had on it. This piece of paper said $75,000. If you want to buy it, you got to pay me 75,000. That's what I owe on it. I said, okay, sold." So I bought that house for 75,000. Long story short, I didn't do a comp study again. I didn't do a rental market study. I didn't understand exactly how much it's going to cost. I just knew I wanted to fix it up and rent it out. I overpaid for that house, over rehabbed it, and I realized I couldn't rent it out enough to even barely cover my debt service on that property. And I went $80,000 in the hole, and it was a very challenging time. I had to borrow money from my mom, had to put money on my credit cards, and I learned a very tough lesson very quick. And I spent the next 6 months rehabbing that house, and got through the rehab. And what I ended up doing is moving into that property. It was brand new, essentially. I took it down to studs, brought it back up, and rented out the one I was living in. And I had a decent interest rate on that. I was still able to cash flow on the one I was living in. So I was able to kind of save the deal, but now I got this $80,000 debt problem I have to now burn off and figure out how to get out of. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this. I need to get some education. And so that's when I joined a mentorship group and started really learning how to invest correctly in passive real estate. And from that point forward, I took a step back and went after it with a whole new, better approach moving forward.
Okay. So yeah, you got some education, got some not buying houses in people's attics anymore while your wife's in labor. It's probably a better way to go about doing it. Um, so how long were you kind of investing in on the residential side in single family?
I ended up, after that, I started over. I moved to Oklahoma City, and I ended up buying a whole bunch more houses, and everything turned the corner for me. And the quick version of the story is I ended up getting my investor realtor's license, and I was selling houses on my lunch break and after work. Ended up selling 99 houses in 2 years. And that was a turning point in my investment career. I made all this money, and I was able to buy about 30 single family homes all the way up until about 2016. I had a good run in there for 2013 to 2016, for about 2.5, 3 years. We're buying the same houses around 35 to say 50,000 bucks a pop, and they're all in around say 70 to $90,000. I was getting 2% deals at the time on the single family. But that's when 2016, I remember things just started to not underwrite as well. And we couldn't get the 2% deals, becoming 1.5 and 1.1 and 1.2 kind of deals. Like, there's got to be a better way. And that's when I always wanted to be a multifamily investor. And that mentorship program I joined when I made the first mistake in that second house, they had an apartment investment day on the second day of their 2-day event, and I immediately got butterflies. I still remember this. I was like, that is what I want to do. That is cool. That's sexy. That's the place to be. But I didn't have the mindset. I didn't have the belief. And I certainly didn't think I had enough money to be able to do something like that. That's why I continued on a single family path. But in 2016, I was selling, like I said, I sold 99 houses. My first client, who's now my business partner, he bought 45 of those 99. And I introduced the idea of apartment investing with him, and he decided to come with me to this 2-day event in Dallas. And basically, he kind of sponsored me on because I worked hard and I really served my clients well, and I helped him get a lot of homes. He decided to become my partner, and that's when everything shifted here in 2016. We ended up getting into apartment investing, and I ended up selling all my houses. So apartment investing is the place to be. The economies of scale makes much more sense, and the return on your time makes much more sense. I was tired of going to Home Depot. I made 1,000 Home Depot stops over the course of my single family days. And now I could pay a company to go do the Home Depot runs and do everything else. I now become an asset manager, and I'm overseeing assets. I'm learning about asset management and how to improve the value of investment properties while minimizing my downside risk. And my thought process, my role, everything started shifting. And some keys there was mentorship. I got another mentor who was very savvy, very good at apartment investing. Continue to work on my mindset and grow internally and personally, so that I can have the belief in myself that I can be buying these multi-million-dollar assets, right? And partnerships was so valuable and key for me. My business partner, Tariq, he was a transaction side. He has a corporate finance background. I was flying airplanes, right? How can I close a deal over a telephone call at 24,000 feet in my airplane? It just doesn't, there's ways to hook up communication systems to do that, but I probably wouldn't be flying again after that. So I'd get fired from the Air Force.
Yeah. The Air Force probably doesn't want you using your time up there in the air like that.
Let me talk to my banker. Hey, hold on, guys. I know we're in the middle of a mission here, but let me make a phone call from the air to my banker on the ground. See what if you can answer this question. Yeah, that wouldn't work out. So, but partnership was key, and I was able to handle my part as an operational side to manage the property management company ways that it could fit into my work schedule at the time. And so I remember actually having KPI calls on the side of a road somewhere at times on my cell phone. You can do a lot with a cell phone these days. You can have all your information on the cell phone, all the communication you need to do. I remember, like in between meetings or whatever it was, I would still find ways to get that piece done on a certain limited basis. You can only scale so far, right? But that's how we're able to start to scale. And so we've been doing my investment company, Anthem Capital. We've been buying properties and selling properties, holding properties for 7 years now. It's been an absolute game changer in my life. We've owned roughly 3,000 doors. We bought about 19 properties. We sold 14, raised around 90 million in equity, and realized about a 27% average annualized return. And it's absolutely changed my life. I was able to kick the 9-to-5 job, and I live my dream life. It's not that I don't work. I still work, and maybe even work harder than I've ever worked my entire life. So I'm building a company, building a business, and I'm in charge of people's money, and I want to make sure that I preserve it to the best of my absolute best ability. So I take that very seriously, right? But the freedom you have of not having someone look over your shoulder every day or questioning what you're doing, where you're going, and what you're doing with whatever you're doing with, the freedom you have to be outside of these circles where they don't understand that you can actually do better, not investing all in the stock market or just saving your money for a rainy day kind of mindset, or cutting back on your living lifestyle so you can have a little bit more money. I don't think we have savings problems. We have income problems. We got to find ways to make more money, not save more. We do, you know what I mean? Like from a high level standpoint, of course, we could always be smarter with our money, managing our money, of course, but if you find a way to make money work for you, you'll have more of it at the end of the day. And so it's been an absolute incredible experience and ride to get to this point where we are today with Anthem Capital.
I agree. I don't think people are going to save their way out of financial issues. There's a lot more to it than that. Um, let's talk a little bit about asset management, something we both are passionate about. Talk about some of the things in your experience that have become, sort of best practices. What do you find helps in terms of being that managing the manager, right? You're really kind of working closely with whatever third party management group you have. Do you have are you guys vertically integrated, or you have a third party?
We don't do vertical integration. We like to be nimble, and we like to be in multiple markets. So more focused on that than property management. So no, but we do vertically integrated construction management, but not property management.
Gotcha. So how do you sort of feel that that's best operated as the asset manager? How do you feel that you manage that role?
Sure. Well, just like in the flying world and the bomber world, you got to start with the target, the end in mind, and you build a plan actually from the end backwards to the beginning. The beginning is the runway where you take off. The end is the target, right? And actually, the runway is the end because you want to land where you hopefully do,
Yeah,
right? But so that's the same in the investment world. You start with the end in mind. What is the end? The projected investor returns that you communicated to investors. You want to meet or exceed projected investor returns. You build a plan to make sure you hit that target. And so way we do that in the property management, working with property management companies, we build a budget with them. We have our own pro forma, but then you have a property budget, which is separate than your pro forma. The pro forma numbers are incorporated, but we actually want the property budget to be above our pro forma numbers so that we can hopefully under promise and over deliver to our investors. So if our NOI is say $1 million on the pro forma level, maybe we want a 1.5 or 1.3 on the property level to give ourselves some extra pad and to set the expectation with our property management company of what we are trying to achieve. And we work with the property management company on very closely in building this budget. We ask them for initial pass, they give us initial pass, and then we'll set aside a day to meet with the property management company to go over the entire budget line by line by line. And that is where the tone is first set, where the expectation is first communicated. And that's when you're sharing with them, they need to know what you want to do with the property, right? And they need to understand what your business plan is. So part of the way about doing this is making sure you clearly communicate what is your business plan, what you're trying to achieve. And then you say, what do I need to hit? And you tell them we need to hit a $1.3 million NOI, for example. Then we sketch that in, we're building it in, and we're seeing exactly how can we execute the business plan. And I think this topic here on execution piece, understanding how to truly execute a plan, people don't truly have a appreciation for if you haven't done it. And if you haven't done it, partner with somebody who has, because at the end of the day, this plan you're building is not numbers on a piece of paper. It's people and processes and parts and materials, peoples and processes. So to rehab those units and say you want to rehab 5 units per month, 10 units per month, what is your process and your plan, and where are you going to get these materials, and where are you going to get the people to do that? And literally sketch that out and make sure you understand if that is a feasible plan or not, and how much execution risk is built into your plan. You're walking through those steps in this budget meeting with them, and you're walking through exactly how and what template of interior improvements you're going to be using. And maybe you don't know exactly at first because you want to do A/B testing. You want to go all in with all the type of amenities you want in an interior unit, or you want to do middle of the road, or you want to do nothing. You're testing the market, but you have those templates kind of understood up front, and you're getting feedback from your property management company on exactly what they think you need to do to get this property to the next level. And again, you're putting all these inner workings on a piece of paper and the budget, but you're talking through the processes. What construction company is going to do it? Where the materials are going to come from? How are you going to get them there on time? Like, those are the things that people don't appreciate and understand, that you need to understand on the other side of owning this property. You got it across the finish line, but there's been many times I bet people like don't have a plan. They think they communicated a plan, but they don't have the people, I should say, to put that plan in place. Figure out those people and figure out those processes before you even get into an investment. And me as a passive investor, I'm going to ask those questions. Who is the construction company? What is their track record? How were they able, and what have they previously done? How did they actually accomplish it? Where did they get their materials from? And I know exactly what goes on in the material world these days because I live through the challenges. Like certain companies out there don't deliver like they say they're going to deliver. And if they're not delivering like they say they're going to deliver, where are you going to source those materials? A lot of people say China, right? Well, do you even have China set up, right?
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. So you're going through all those inner workings, okay? Now, yeah, I think I proved my point there. Now you have the plan in place. Then you push play. Then you have weekly KPI calls. I like to be very streamlined to my communication processes, even with email, with everything. By the way, you don't have a lot of people talking to the property, one person, one voice talking to the property management company. On emails, you can have one person doing the communication. You can CC everyone else, streamline the communication, or you can use Slack. We put a lot of our back and forth inside of Slack to save and cluttering up your inbox. I hate email, by the way. I like Slack a whole lot better. It's easier to keep track of communication and task management. You have task management tools. You can use Monday. You can use Asana. You can use Basecamp. You can use all kinds of different tools to track different tasks and to-dos with each of these properties. You have a KPI sheet. I have like at one point 80 different line items I look at. Some of it I have an assistant that fills in on the back end, and some of it I have the property management company fill in a KPI sheet. Well, the KPI sheet has the budgeted numbers that you agreed to in the budgeting meeting. Those budgeted numbers go in the KPI sheet. Then you track the progress on a weekly basis, how the property is performing, and you're making adjustments along the way. And the mindset of an asset manager is you have the end target, you're working backwards, you're leading and you're managing, you're not doing. So you're leading and managing. You give enough room for the property management company to do what you hired them to do. Let them do their job. Don't do it for them. They want to do their job. They want to perform. They're there to provide a great service for you. So understand that. Don't be that micromanager. Be that person that gives them the tools and the resources they need to do their job well, enough room to do their job well, but do verify. Do make sure that when they put 98% on that KPI sheet, you still look at the rent roll, and make sure it's trending or it's 98%. Do put your eyes on the financial statements. We look at them 3 or 4 times a week. I'm watching the income on a financial statements, not just on the KPI. I'm pulling the income statement. I'm looking at it. Do understand what your projected exposure is going to be. That's very critical, is understanding exposure, and that is tied to the seasonality of properties. Meaning, like, you may have a lot of notice to vacates coming up here in the summertime because you manage your lease expirations appropriately, where it's that bell curve where it's peaking out in the summer, and a lot of people move in the summer. So do understand the exposure that's going to be in place, not just what's on the KPI sheet, but look at the NTVs and understand the exposure rates. That will have a huge impact on the bottom line income that comes into your property and how you're able to manage that. And in the KPI call, we also have a renovation meeting, the very first half of the call, where we bring on the construction manager to talk about potential deliveries of units, any roadblocks, any projected future units that we want the construction manager to do. We're sketching that whole thing out on a weekly basis, and we have processes on the back end to make sure that we have a way to schedule in each of these unit rehabs, and also so that we can order the materials ahead of time to make sure we understand what the lead times are, so that you do not create any bottlenecks. And just what I'm describing right here, this whole thing is a full-time job. It is not, you can buy some asset, and by the way, I don't expect any company, property management company, unless they have a dedicated construction arm, to be able to manage all of these processes. An asset manager or a designated someone on the ownership team needs to be in the middle of these processes to make sure that you do not create any bottlenecks. And one key thing in today's market, we were spoiled in the previous market, pre-COVID, pre-interest rate hike, where we had all this natural organic rent growth, a lot to do with the liquidity that was infused in the system that created artificial cap rate compression, right? Those days are now gone. It is truly about execution. And the thing is this, you do not have any room for error, very little. I mean, you create it in your plan. Yes, you're going to have that buffer available, but that buffer is smaller than it's ever been. So you got to be able to execute. You got to have these processes and people and plans in place, right? In order to be able to execute correctly. is the things that I'm talking about, these bottleneckings where materials don't show up, cabinet doors don't show up, something doesn't show up that just cannot make a unit rentable. And you go to all the local vendors and everyone is out of stock because all the challenges that COVID created. Well, how are you going to solve that problem? How are you going to get cabinet doors there to get that unit rentable, right? Or you'll have communication processes not in place where the construction company is producing units, but the property management company doesn't know about it because you didn't create a communication two-way street. And so the property management company is not advertising and marketing that unit that is sitting there rent ready. And so weekly, we look at the availability sheet and we look at the rental tracker and we make sure there are no gaps between the rental tracker on the projected deliverables and when the availability sheet says that a unit is going to be ready, so that the property manager can be marketing that unit and selling it and putting in the system, showing it rent ready for someone to lease. All these particulars that I'm talking about is how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you just hit on a ton of really important points. And I think all that you just said, Ivan, like really illustrates the point that the asset management, especially right now in this market, because, you know, years prior, it was kind of like, well, you did an okay job with the cap rate compression and the rent growth and all of that. It was going to, the values of properties were going to go up. If you're talking about a value add property right now, your management skills and techniques and processes, that's going to be the key to sort of winning and losing on these properties. And the way that you're approaching the KPIs and the meetings with the property management group. So it really outlines what's very important in the space. So you're vertically integrated on the construction side, and then your third party management is managing sort of all of the leasing and everything like that, correct?
Correct. I would say, I mean, not 100% correct. We do have some property management companies that are suited, that they can handle the capacity or the additional workload of managing a project. Then we're not vertically integrated, but other companies do not have that built out. So we do, though. And here's how we handle that. I get excited about this. So I went through the trials and tribulations of trying to get a construction company to come and work on your property. One, if you're in this business, you're going to know that no company wants to do interiors. There's no money. They're very tedious, especially these older properties. They're cumbersome, and it takes a lot of time, but very little profit for in construction companies' time. So the way you get them to agree to do the interiors, you have to give them a whole project on the exterior, parking lot, paint, whatever it may be. So that's where a lot of the upside is, or maybe you have to replace a bunch of balconies, right? And I've been in situations where construction companies, we go to a contract, but then they don't show up, or they're not managing the expenses. They're not really carrying the bottom line, and they're pushing the expense piece to the owner, and they don't have any incentive to managing expenses. I've seen all the ways that things work in the change order world, and the change orders come in, and that's where a lot of the upside money is for construction managers. So for what we did is, I have a friend who, this is still related to what we're doing, but tied to the Ukrainian effort and with all the refugees going on in Ukraine, and a lot of the Ukrainian people coming from there are construction workers. And the U.S. government has a program where you can fast track people into the U.S. to get them away from the war effort over there, and still find work and make a contribution. So what we did is we created our own construction company using Ukrainian workers. About 50% were refugees, 50% were based out of the U.S. And what happens is they live on site, and so they're not tied to any. They're not being asked to date any other owner, any other property. Like my property is the only property they're dating day in, day out. They get up, they work from morning till late at night, and it's been incredible. Excuse me, my productivity went up by 5x. I was turning maybe 2 or 3 units a month up to 10 units a month now, and my cost went down by 15% overall. And when you look at productivity, that is so key. One of the biggest things that kills a deal, a plan, is vacancy loss. Going back to that bottlenecking issue. If the previous construction, one example, previous construction, yeah, we could do 10 units a month, no problem. And say we gave them 5 or 6 instead of 10. Let's make sure 5 or 6, and we could do those a month. Well, 2 months go by, they only produce a couple. 3 months go by, only produce. Well, it takes a while to get materials here. Okay, fine. Now it's been 3 months. We have the material plan figured out, and you've only produced 5 or 6. Those 5 or 6, and then, well, we're about done with these. Let's get some more. So I get some more units, and now they have 10 units offline.
Yeah.
And then that creates a bottleneck issue because you have 10 units offline and not producing units, right? And that creates huge vacancy loss. Vacancy loss on average $1,200 a unit. 10 units, what's $12,000 just right there. Right. And so I'm not worried about economic loss. I'm worried about vacancy loss. I'm just trying to get some units online and rent it out. Didn't have this issue with the Ukrainian team. And I created my whole vertically integrated construction company. I brought in a designated person that can source materials very efficiently and fast and work through all the roadblocks. That's a full-time gig, working through the roadblocks, get materials on site on time. And the back end accounting thing is like, that is a very huge challenge, but we line that whole system on the back end piece. Another piece that people don't talk about is making sure the CapEx draws happen in a very efficient manner, because you got to get your guys paid. They deserve to be paid, obviously, right? And you want to pay them on time and pay them well. You got to have someone managing that back end accounting piece, and then making sure that whatever was given to you on the estimate is what you build on the invoice, and making sure the quality is there. If you're not co-located with these assets, or you don't have the time to go look at every single line item on an interior unit to make sure the paint base, every single thing is done correctly, you got to have a system of person built in the process. So we have full-time construction manager to manage that whole thing. And that's how we operate today on the construction side.
Yeah, I love that. I've actually thought about that a lot. I think it would be, construction is a background in construction. That's the part that makes a lot of sense to me. I enjoy it. I have to make sure that I don't get too hands-on, because I do enjoy it. But I think that sort of creating your own crew and construction management piece is a really it's a great idea, but it's almost something that has to happen eventually, I think, as you grow and scale, because your property management, your third-party property management, most of them, I think, are at best, sort of mediocre on the construction management side. And it's not really their fault. It's just, there's a lot to do, right? It's like you have really 2 large components of property management. There's if it's a value add deal, there's that construction and all of that. And then there's the leasing side. And what I think is getting them to be good at the leasing side. If I can have someone who's excellent at leasing and handling the tenants, and then I can manage manage the construction as an asset manager, that's something that can work well together and have, good success at the property level. So I love the idea of, sort of creating that construction arm and having the Ukrainian refugees as part of it. I think it's all very smart sort of way to solve a substantial problem in the business. I think a substantial not bottleneck is probably the way that you've stated is exactly correct. It's just a place that you can get caught, sort of going too slow if you're not right on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So as you move forward, and sort of you're growing the business and everything like that, is that something that you anticipate being strictly within your business, Anthem Capital, construction only for you, or do you think you'll build out a construction business that can help other investors as well?
We have a construction business to help out other investors. So we're here to help others. We can help build out the same systems and processes for other people. So if you're interested, I can get my contact info in the end, and they can reach out.
Awesome. Okay, really cool. Well, with that in mind, let's go ahead and switch gears, and I will ask you the questions that I ask every guest. The first one is, of course, being based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. What's your why, Ivan? What drives you towards, bigger and bigger success?
Couple answers. I say my 8 eyes are my whys. My 8 eyes are my whys. So there's 4 people in my family: my wife, my 3 boys. makes up my 8 whys, particularly my boys. One with my wife, we set out on this dream many years ago, to be a full-time apartment investor, and the dream came true. So we want to live up to our own dreams that we set for ourselves. For my boys, I want to show them that you can dream, you can think big. I want to teach them to think big and think farther, think wider than their dad has ever thought. But show them that this is the outcome of all. When you're hyper focused on a goal, intently focused on a goal, it does come to pass. So I want to prove that to them so that they can have that understanding for their future. And the last thing is, innately in me, the more you grow internally, the more you realize there's more to learn about yourself. And I think there's just this curiosity in me to see how far I can grow in my life, personally, professionally, and all that I do. And that there, though, is not only for my own personal financial gain. I think for me, I have my own, this is my personal belief, I have my own moral duty to do that which I can give back and be of asset to this world, and in the capacity that I am. And being of value is doing the work that I do and creating value with people's investments, and to show people that you can do this thing that I'm doing, and you can come literally from nothing, or have whatever past you can think of, you can still live this life. And so I'm inspired by that idea and motivated by that idea, and inspired to squeeze out as much blood in this tournament of mine before my time is up.
Love it. I love it. I love it's one of my favorite things about doing the podcast. It seems like nearly every single guest, and especially those that are even farther along in the journey, it's like becomes less and less about money and things like that I think people outside the business think this is why real estate investors just to sit on piles of money. It just becomes more and more about impact and giving back, and having a positive influence on the people around you and in your community. So it's fantastic. Second question for you, Ivan. Tell us something about yourself that maybe isn't common knowledge, a special skill, a hobby, anything that you're comfortable sharing.
Let's see. So I have a few passions outside of this real estate world. I'm a big foodie, snob. I would categorize even the snobby level.
Okay.
I love the curated dinner experiences you can go pay good money for. And really, why I love that is just because I think that's an art in of itself, and I love experiencing what another chef imagines, or a team of people imagine, and create this amazing experience. So that's why I enjoy that. I love the outdoors. I grew up in Oregon, like I said. Something about being in nature is just incredible. And I think the last things, I love to travel. I will eventually create a business where I'm still doing good, providing good, but it's going to allow me to have more time for travel down the road. And I want to travel with my boys, continue to travel with my boys when they're still in their younger years.
So, do you like to cook, or you like to have it cooked for you?
I like to have it cooked for me.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I think cooking, I can get passionate about it. I like making good cocktails and drinks, though. I'm pretty good at it. Mojitos, my kind of go-to. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah. Awesome. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what would be the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. You can send me an email, Iven at anthemcp.com, IVEN at anthemcp.com. And then we'll take the conversation from there.
Perfect. And we'll put that in the show notes. Final question for you, Ivan. What's a piece of advice you would give to someone who wants to get started in real estate? They're just not quite sure what direction to take.
Absolutely. Join a mentorship group. join a mentorship group, or attend a real estate conference, and ask questions of those who are part of that real estate mentorship group before you decide what direction you want to go. You'll glean a lot of information about the next steps that you decide to take for yourself at a relatively low cost and a high impact on your time, because it's all curated in one weekend event. You get a lot of questions answered in just that.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great place to sort of start your journey, figure out, you know, you can meet a lot of people in a short amount of time and be, you know, sort of direct and intentional about that. Well, listen, this is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you for sharing all that you did. And I think, you know, your tips on asset management should be tremendously helpful to people that are, you know, focused on that area of multifamily investing. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. You're very welcome, and it's great being here.
Yeah, awesome. And folks listening, I know you're going to love the episode. Please like, rate, and review so we can get more guests like Ivan and keep the show going. Thank you. Have a good day. I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.